Now, one could certainly argue whether the CIVIVI Elementum, which is an excellent pocket knife, but it is a relatively new one, is deserving of iconic status or not. But I will say this. Just in the last year, CIVIVI announced that their Elementum family has sold over 1 million units. And the Elementum has become a benchmark by which other budget pocket knives are judged. But is it still the best at what it does? I'm David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter, and on today's episode of Beat the Icon, we're gonna find out. Now, it's certainly hard to argue with the success story of the CIVIVI Elementum. In addition to that huge number of units moved in just a few short years, it has spawned a bunch of variants. And certainly those have contributed to that number. But we've got alternate blade shapes like this Tonto profile, a Warncliffe bladed option. It's expanded to button lock versions in addition to the original liner locks. The full-size or larger Elementum button lock, and the Elementum 2, which is the same size as the original, both with button lock mechanisms. It's also gone the opposite direction in size in these mini keychain flipper sizes with a frame lock. It's even got some fixed blade versions, both a mini neck knife version that you can see here and full-sized outdoor knives, or big EDC carry fixed blades, if you will. We've also most recently got replaceable blade utility knife versions, also with that button lock, and even premium iterations from their parent company, We Knife Company, with titanium and particle steel blades all around. Just a ton of different options to choose from, covers a lot of bases, but we're here today to talk about the original. Now, what made this thing such a success? Simply, the price, the materials, and the quality at the time this came out were hard to ignore. Now, they started out under 50 bucks with G10 handles and have since spawned numerous versions with micarta, carbon fiber. This new Lexan version right here I think is particularly eye-catching. They also had D2 blade steel, which in the budget arena is pretty much the best you can get in terms of outright edge retention. It can often compete with higher-end particle steels. And a level of fit and finish and features that generally made the knife feel way more expensive than that $50 price point. We have a very finely ground blade with a nice thin edge, extremely sharp out of the box, ceramic ball bearings in the pivot, and excellent action from the flipper tab right here. Do all of the competitors we're going to look at today have flipper tabs? No, but is that going to make a difference? It's going to be up to you to decide, of course. So just like that drop point blade lends itself to a wide variety of uses and scenarios, the handle also lends itself to a wide variety of people. It is short enough to fit easily in the pocket, but it's got this nice elliptical shape that whether you have small hands or big, it just works. None of the handle gets in the way of larger hands, and it works just as well for those smaller grips too. We've got a deep carry pocket clip as well, nice enthusiast-friendly feature. It is not reversible, however, so maybe that's opening the door a little bit for some of the competition. We'll find out soon. Apart from the price, the materials, and the quality, I think the general design played into the success of this knife a little bit too. I would describe this thing as being entirely undramatic, and that's not meant to be an insult. It is just kind of a elemental version of a basic pocket knife. Maybe that's where they got the name. Its 3-inch drop point blade is also perfect for a broad swath of users. It's a very versatile shape. It is a length being just under 3 inches that you can take it just about anywhere. And it's also just a super handy size for most folks. So for the competition today, I am going to keep things at a hard limit of no more than a 3-inch blade. So potential competitors like the CJRB Pyrite, which might be mentioned, aren't going to be shown today because that is a hair bigger. But everything wraps up into a knife that is not only a great beginner's pocket knife, it's also for most folks all the knife you'll ever need for a very affordable price. But what about what came before the Elementum and knives constructed like this took over the budget range of the pocket knife market? What was someone to do when you couldn't get your hands on these? So first, we're going to look at some classics from a little bit further in the past than the most recent explosion of pocket knives to see how they stack up. First up, we're going to look at the Kershaw Cryo series. The Cryo and the slightly larger Cryo 2 were oftentimes at the top of lists of best affordable pocket knives in its heyday. And today they're priced about $45, so a little bit less than the base price of the cheapest Elementum, or the cheapest standard sized Elementum right here. You're getting a little bit less blade length, but actual sharpened edge is about the same between the two, just a hair less on the Cryo. You've got stainless steel handles, so it has a bit more of a durable feel than the scaled liner-like construction of the Elementum. Likewise with the frame lock, it just has a bit more feeling of solidity there. It comes with a deep carry pocket clip, but only in the tip down position. If you want to carry this tip up like you can the Elementum, it's not going to quite be deep carry. It is reversible, however, so this is a little more lefty friendly. The steel here is 8CR13 MOV. It is a stainless steel, unlike D2 on those standard Elementums, but it is not going to hold an edge nearly as long as the D2 will. The D2 is definitely going to give you a longer lasting edge, no ifs, ands, or buts. Similar type of hollow grind, not quite as thin, but still plenty thin enough. This is an assisted opening knife. It comes from an era of the heyday of assisted opening knives. Rather than ball bearings in the pivot and a nice crisp detent, you have that assisted action. It's nice and repeatable, maybe not quite as satisfying in today's market and a little bit more cumbersome to close than the standard Elementum, but still good action. How does that stack up for you? As with all of these, let us know in the comments what you think the best competitors are, and if we missed something too, let us know at the end. Another great affordable knife of, I don't want to say yesteryear, but we'll say yesteryear for lack of a better term. The original squid knives from CRKT were often very budget friendly and highly recommended, still are to this day. And their recently introduced XM version of the squid, I think honestly responded to the Elementum, took some cues from the Elementum, and updated this design for the XM. They're coming in just above 50 bucks. This one's about $54 right now. We've got a frame lock on the back, so likewise a bit more of a robust feel than the Elementum. We've got G10 on the front side as well. So just two different colors available right now. You don't have nearly the variety that you have in the Elementum lineup, which when I checked on the website earlier, we've got like 60 different versions of Elementum on the site. Like the Elementum, we've also got a pretty neutral handle here for both big hands and small. It's got a little bit more personality, to be honest. That's one thing where I think the Elementum is maybe a little bit lacking, that, you know, a strong personality, but again, that could be what has made it successful. The blade here is D2, just like the standard Elementum. It's hollow ground at just under 3 inches, just like the Elementum. We've got a black stone-washed finish on this knife as well. The action here is, however, also assisted, so you're not going to get the same type of crisp ball bearing type flipping action that you expect from the Elementum, just that repeatable action with a little bit more effort required to close. Deep carry pocket clip, almost deep carry in this case, but just like the Elementum, single-sided only. The Skyline, another knife from Kershaw, was also oft recommended back in the day. And I say back in the day because the original Skyline is discontinued and it was above that 3-inch mark. But this KnifeCenter exclusive mini Skyline is actually a pretty solid matchup with the Elementum. Price on this regularly is about 45 bucks, so undercuts the Elementum by about $5. You've got a D2 blade, just like the Elementum. In terms of actual edge, you've got a little bit more with the Skyline Mini, even though this is a 2.8-inch blade. If you actually measured it from the tip of the handle to the tip of the blade, it's a little bit shorter, but you get more out of it at the same time. It is hollow ground, not quite as thin as the CIVIVI, and that is just kind of always going to be the case. They do their edges super thin and super consistent all across the board. G10 handles, almost deep carry pocket clip. It is reversible, unlike the Elementum, so a nice bonus there. Handle's not quite as neutral, however. It's still going to work fairly well. It's just a little bit more prescriptive because of that aggressive finger groove right there. Liner lock, just like the Elementum. Ball bearings in the pivot, just like the Elementum. And unlike the original Skyline, this flips way better. Nice and crisp all around. You can get it in a black stone wash or a stone washed finish. Actually, as we're filming this right now, it's on sale for 35 bucks too, which is a really good deal. Other great budget pocket knives that have kind of cemented themselves in pretty classic status at this point, the Ontario Rat 2. 3-inch blade, AUS 8 or D2 steels available, coming in a bit under 40 bucks these days, so a fair bit cheaper than the Elementum. You've got that flat ground drop point blade instead of the hollow grind, and not quite as neutral of a handle here. The matchup's pretty good though. You've got a liner lock, you've got a 4-position pocket clip, so tip up or down, left or right sided, no problem here. Definitely more versatile there. No flipper tab, however. This is the first non-flipper alternative we've got. Still has pretty good action though. Washers in the pivot here instead of ball bearings, so a little bit better for super dusty and dirty environments. For most everyday carry scenarios, just general purpose stuff probably isn't going to be that big of an issue, but if you don't like cleaning your knives ever, this might have a little bit of an edge. I think an even closer matchup than the Rat Model 2, however, would be the Zancudo, designed from the folks at ESEE. Has about a $36 price point for the D2 versions. AUS 8 stainless steel is also available. It's got that 3-inch drop point blade. You've got a flat grind instead of hollow. You've got a frame lock instead of a liner lock. So it's got a little bit more robust feeling, injection molded front handle there so you don't get some of the cool handle variations. Just like the Elementum though, we've got a very elliptical, very neutral handle shape for both big and large-handed people. Not a huge fan of the styling, however. As big of a fan as I have been and continue to be of this knife, it has even, less of an elegant handle than the Elementum does. But it's one of those things that you put it in your hand and you realize it just plain works. No flipper tab, but you do still have finger guard protection because of that handle shape, and as you can see, it still has good action as well, even without ball bearings in the pivot. Washers on this one also. Tip up or tip down pocket clip. It's not deep carry, and it is right side only on this knife. The price, however, is really great. All right, let's open it up now to some more modern feeling stuff, or contemporaries to the Elementum at least, as opposed to the predecessors. Let me know what you thought of those options though down in the comments. The first one we're gonna look at specs-wise matches up very nicely, and I think it has a more elegant styling or a more intentional styling. That is the Bestech Mini Dundee, an Ostap Hell design. Price on these are about 43 bucks. So you've got a fair bit of savings, about 7 or 8 bucks, depending on which base model Elementum you're looking at. But very good pricing there. Just under 3-inch D2 blade steel, so it's the same good stuff as the Elementum. High flat grind as opposed to hollow, but it has the same kind of high degree of fit and finish that the Elementum has just really owned and knocked out of the park in the years since its introduction. But it's got a few things that make it feel a little more elevated than the Elementum, if I'm honest. One, you've got a liner lock, and it is inset rather than being full liners that you see on the Elementum. Requires a little bit higher degree of precision and just feels a little bit nicer as a result too. You've also got a pocket clip that is inset into the G10 handles here with flush mounted screws. Also very elegant, and it is reversible, something you don't get on the Elementum. And if you don't like this color of G10, there are several flavors to choose from, not just this more brightly colored variant. Let's check out the action, shall we? Like the Elementum, we've got ball bearings in the pivot and a flipper tab, and the action is nice and crisp. The handle is neutral enough, but it has some excellent personality, just a little more visually interesting in my opinion. But again, this video is about y'all's opinion. What do you folks think in the comments too? For another non-flippered alternative, check out the CJRB Small Feldspar. This is also a good deal under the Elementum in price, just about 35 bucks. You've got a 3-inch D2 blade, flat ground instead of hollow like the Elementum. You've got an elliptical handle, good for all hand sizes. You've got G10 with contouring, not just the flat scales that you get on the standard Elementum. And you've got inset liners with that liner lock as well. A lot of more premium features up to and including the pivot collar ring in gold on this particular version right here, which they call gray G10. It's more of a slate blue in my opinion. Deep carry pocket clip inset with flush head screws and reversible for left or right carry. Thumb studs instead of flipper tab is really the only thing on paper, apart from the reversible pocket clip, where the specs kind of differ. All the other thing is, that more in the hand feel. It's got a good feel in the hand. The contouring is nice. The action from the ball bearings in the pivot are also very, very nice. A little bit more of a pointy tip than the Elementum as well, which could be a plus or a minus depending on what you're looking for. Next up, we've got the Knafs Lander, designed by Ben Peterson. And this is about 45 bucks, and when you hold it up next to the Elementum, it feels a little bit smaller, kind of like maybe a half size smaller than the Elementum. You've got a 2 3/4 inch D2 blade on the Lander instead of stretching out near to that 3-inch mark. But in the hand, it doesn't feel like the Lander offers too much less than the Elementum. And that's because of the flipper tab right there. You can see how it goes. You may have a little bit less, but the fact that you can kind of choke up a little bit on the Lander makes a little bit of difference right there. So that is something to consider for sure. And then despite the knife being smaller, the edge itself, you've got about the same amount of sharpened edge on the Lander. So there's an argument to be made there that smaller package with the same amount of cutting potential could be the opening the Lander needs. We've also got some of those same kind of features that you saw on the Bestech and the CJRB that feel just a little half step above maybe the Elementum. You've got the inset liners with the liner lock. You've got deep carry clip that is inset with flush head screws. It is reversible as well, and you've even got a blockout plate here for the front side, which you don't get on either of those previous two knives. You've also got the fast scale swap capability, which everything on the table so far, the one thing where the Elementum really does win on over every of them is the variety and the aftermarket options for scales that you can get. Because this is so popular, it's no surprise there's been aftermarket stuff, and it's no surprise that there's a ton of variants you can get right out of the box from the factory. The Lander also shares a bit of that. There's not a ton of factory SKUs, factory variants ready to go, but there are a ton of different scale options you can purchase, both officially from Knafs as well as from aftermarket vendors. We carry a bunch of those on our site as well, and they're super easy to swap. You just have to remove these two screws. You don't actually have to remove the pivot screw or anything else to swap the scales around. You can even 3D print your own scales because they make the 3D files for the scale hardware here freely available. You can go pick it up for no money at all. No, whatever it costs for your internet connection anyway. All right, so everything we've looked at so far, both the predecessors and the contemporaries to the Elementum, have been liner or frame locks. We're gonna spread into some finger-safe closing action locking knives, which may compete more directly with the Elementum 2, which is the standard size 3-inch blade with the button lock in the Elementum lineup, which I haven't talked about too much yet, but depending on the price, this could be a competitor to this or to the standard liner lock version. Now the standard Elementum 2 starts at about 65 bucks with a Nitro V blade. It's a stainless steel, which D2 is only a semi-stainless. It'll hold an edge quite well, but not as long as the D2, but it is gonna be tougher than D2. This version I'm holding right here is actually an X-Center exclusive with S35 VN steel, which comes in under 100 bucks. But that's not quite what made the Elementum famous with its nice budget category. But let's take a look at some of these options. The first, Ben Peterson's knife we just looked at, his former video co-host in crime, Zach Whitmore of the Zach in the Wild channel, recently released the Yonder from CIVIVI. And this might be, it's emerging as an early contender right now in the just few short weeks since its release as we're filming this to the Elementum. It is priced just over 50 bucks, comes in at about 57 for the standard version. 14C28N blade steel, which is similar to Nitro V. Let me compare it here to the standard Elementum. Like the Yonder, or like the Lander, it feels like about a half size smaller, but the actual usable handle length on these is remarkably close. And even though the knife is a little shorter, actual sharpened edge, about the same between these two. So there's really not a lot between them. What you get are G10 handles with contouring and reversibility, which even the Elementum 2 does not have a reversible pocket clip. You also get that blockout plate on the side. You're not using the mini pocket clip on. You've got a crossbar lock, which offers that finger-safe closing action. Your fingers never get in the path of the blade as it goes. And this truly is way more of an ambidextrous knife than the Elementum is, and it's built with the same kind of feel, the fit and finish that you expect from it. High flat grind on this knife, very thin blade stock, maybe a little more aggressive looking than the standard Elementum. Is that enough to kind of knock it out of contention for beating the Icon in this case? Let me know in the comments. This next knife also kind of rides that line of a slightly more aggressive, slightly more tactical look than the standard Elementum, and that's the Terminus XR from SOG. These are priced at 60 bucks, 3-inch blade, actual sharpened edge, about the same. You've even got this same area in front of the flipper tab that I'm pointing to here that follows a similar angle and allows you to get your fingertip up there anyway for some finer control. You can do that on both of these knives. But the Terminus XR, like the Yonder, boasts some ambidextrous bona fides. You've got a crossbar lock, you've got a reversible deep carry pocket clip, you've got 3 options for opening that. Wrist flick, you've got a flipper tab, and you've got thumb studs. So a bunch of different ways to open it if you're feeling like you want to play around a little bit more, or just whatever suits your preference. Lefties also work well. Neutral handle, a little bit more length, however, a little bit more grip for folks who might need a longer handle. It's funny, like looking at them on paper, it doesn't look like, or side to side, it doesn't look like it would have that much more, but in hand you notice it, or at least I do. Doesn't quite feel as nicely put together as the CIVIVI. I think the reason for that, however, is mostly down to the action. It's very hard to get a crossbar lock with a flipper to have nice, crisp feeling action without the use of detents that you can implement in a liner lock or a frame lock. It's just not going to compete. This feels super, super crisp. Next up, the Kizer Amicus. Really does remind me a lot of sort of a widened Elementum, but with a button lock. These are priced at $47, 3-inch drop point blade, high flat grind. You've got a 9CR series stainless steel here. So it is definitely a step up from the 8CR we talked about when we were looking at that Kershaw Cryo from earlier. And it gives you a stainless option, whereas the D2 not as stainless. This isn't going to be as tough as your Nitro V, as your 14C or your 14C28N. Still going to have pretty capable edge retention though. The G10 handles here are freestanding essentially. You've got lock and liner mechanisms up here around the pivot, but the G10 is allowed to kind of be its own thing there at the back, and it's definitely stable enough for the job. We've got that deep carry clip mounted similarly to the Elementum. It has flush head screws, but it is not inset into the handles. It is, however, reversible, and with that button lock making it more lefty friendly, even though it's not a left-hand biased lock, definitely gives it more options than the Elementum 2 with its button lock can bring to the table, and undercuts the standard Elementum by a few bucks and the button lock Elementum by almost 20 in this case. There's another Kizer button lock to talk about, and the least expensive versions of the button lock Assassin start at $69, only about $4 more than the standard Elementum. This one right here is $79, comes with the carbon fiber handles, but you can get Micarta or Richlight for that $69 price point at this point. 3-inch drop point blade, maybe a little more personality than the Elementum. What you're getting here, the biggest differentiator between them would be the blade steel. 154 cm, made by Crucible. It's a US made steel that is then shipped out and used to make the knife on this, or the blade on this imported knife right here. And then the button lock, of course, and reversibility on the deep carry pocket clip. Is that worth $4 extra for you, that reversible clip and the American made steel? Again, let me know in the comments. And last but not least, design-wise, this might stray a little bit, but the Vosteed Corgi, I think, is interesting. It's priced at about $59, so about $6 less than the button lock Elementum 2, and it has that button lock, as you can see here. And like the original Elementum, it has a bit of that sort of undramatic, inoffensive, almost generic shape. Generic, not meant as an insult. However, things get a little fancier feeling because you have this nice inlay around the pivot area right here. No protection from your hand sliding forward that you would get from the flipper tab on the Elementum, but you've got just a clean, straight profile with the Corgi. Button lock works great. You've got both front and rear flipper options with that squared off tab right there, or the squared off tang of the knife. It also has a very full feeling grip due to that unencumbered shape. Do, however, just make sure to keep your eyes on where that button lock is located. You want to grip it hard and have that blade kind of fall down on you. Keep that in mind. You've also got a deep carry clip. It's not quite deep carry, actually. A little bit sticks out, and it is inset into the handle, but the screws stick up just a little bit. It is reversible, however, as you can see right there. Flat grind, full flat grind on the blade, 14C28N steel, which we've already talked about. Now, it's up to you folks out there. Let me know what you thought of these Elementum alternatives. Do any of them actually beat the icon that is the best-selling CIVIVI Elementum pocket knife? Let me know. Also, let me know if there's anything else out here I missed, anything that you think is a worthy contender to the Elementum's iconic status, or even if it's not iconic in its own right, whether you think it's a better knife than the Elementum. Let me know. And if you want to get your hands on any of these knives as well, check out the links in the description, which will take you to KnifeCenter.com, where in addition to our new Sezzle payment option that allows you to split up payments if you like, also don't forget about our Knife Rewards program so you can earn some free money to spend on your future knives. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.